I'm getting older. Is there any way that I don't have to get grayer? Can we reverse this process?
100% yes. I think there are going to be ways, and there may even be ways right now where we can reverse this process.
Men who have it are often described as being distinguished. Women who wear it are often seen as old. And some people will pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year to cover it. Of course, we're talking about gray hair. What causes gray hair? Can we reverse this cause, whatever it is? And does it have anything to do with how healthy we really are? I'm Pam Huff, 72 years old, a retired journalist. I allowed myself to go gray after undergoing chemotherapy and having my hair grow back, and it came back in a whole lot more salt than it did pepper. So that's where we are. I am joined, as always, by my fellow gray-haired friend, Dr. Steve Austad, distinguished professor at UAB. Steve also holds the Protective Life Endowed Chair in Healthy Aging Research. And our guest for this segment of Living Longer is Dr. Melissa Harris, associate professor in the Department of Biology at UAB. Dr. Harris, and I love this, her team, known as Team Hair Us, get it? Yeah, you're going to in a moment if you don't. Study, all of her students, study the melanocyte stem cells that exist within our hair follicles. Okay. Their research is focused on a whole lot more, though, than just the pigment of your hair and how long you're going to be dark-haired or gray-haired. We're going to hear about that in a few moments. But Melissa, just so we get it straight and everybody understands it, it's the loss of these stem cells that apparently causes us to go gray. Now, stem cells, let's talk about it. Stem cells are used, they divide, and that gives us more skin, or that gives us more blood. So it's extremely important that the stem cells keep dividing. And so is that what happens when our stem cells and our hair follicles just stop dividing? We go gray?
Yeah, so in a short, the answer is yes to that. As we get older, we start to lose function of these stem cells in our hair, our melanocyte stem cells. We start to lose them altogether in our hair, and that is one aspect of what causes hair graying. But if you don't mind, I might just take it back a second and talk a little bit more about the process of how our hair gets its color, because there's actually not just the stem cell population, but another key cell type in our hair that is really the workhorse of giving our hair its color. So in your hair, the portion of your hair that's underneath your skin, we call that the hair follicle. There are two cell populations, your stem cell population and then your pigment cell population. We call these the melanocytes. They sit right at the base of the hair, and these are the ones that actually do the work, the workhorses. They produce the pigment, they have these long dendritic arms, they deposit the pigment into the hair shaft. That's the part that we see on the outside. So they are the ones that actually make our hair colored. So that is one population, and over time with age, we know that those melanocytes, they actually go bad. You can see all kinds of signs of damage in these cells: DNA damage, mitochondrial damage, protein oxidation, even the system that we have in our body to prevent damage, like our antioxidant system, that's dampened. So all of that we see with age in that population. So that's one component of how we start to go gray, is those workhorses not being able to do the work. Yeah, the stem cells are really interesting to us, but they don't really they do a critical job, but they don't work as hard, I don't think. So melanocytes, they have to do this work over the entire growth phase of your hair. So like on my hair, this hair has probably been growing for 5 years or something like that, right? And those melanocytes are the ones that have to do that whole entire time. And part of going gray is that process of stopping that. But once this hair falls out and a new hair grows in, that is the time when we depend on that stem cell. So that melanocyte stem cell has to divide, make new melanocytes, new workhorses for the next hair. And so you can imagine if you lose that stem cell population, you may not see that effect right away, but once that new hair grows in, that's when we see graying. And when we think about long-term graying that happens over time, permanent graying, we think of loss of the stem cells. So two cell populations, both critical in this job, and we can see aging in either of those populations.
As I understand it, typically the majority of people have some gray hair by the time they're 60. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
So the majority, yeah.
Okay. So when I guess it's the aging part more than anything else, though, and that's just the nature of the beast. As we age, that's not the only thing that's shutting down or slowing down. So there are a lot of people who are listening to this right now who want one question answered. I'm getting older. Is there any way that I don't have to get grayer? Can we reverse this process?
I mean, I think yes.
You just made the day out there.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the answer is 100% yes. I think there are going to be ways, and there may even be ways right now where we can reverse this process. So I'm glad I went through that whole spiel about talking about the melanocytes and the melanocyte stem cells. So right now, on the market, you can find products that contain molecules or natural products, things like that, that can affect the melanocyte and its ability to produce pigment. So, you know, when you go and you're in the sun and you can tan, there's a peptide that's released in our skin that causes that tanning response. Well, you can take a biomimetic peptide, apply it on your skin topically, and your hair can retain some of its ability to produce pigment when it had maybe started to go gray. So affecting that base workhorse melanocyte population. So definitely those kinds of products exist. It could be biomimetic peptides. You're seeing some of that being produced now, or natural products. There's a lot of stuff from Eastern medicine, from different plants and roots and things like that that have been included in topicals that have that ability to enhance melanocyte function.
So you're really talking my language now, because as someone that studies aging, there are a lot of things out there that you can go to the store and you could buy, and they make all kinds of ridiculous claims on what they can do for your aging. Presumably not every product out there works in the way that you just described. Is there any way that people can tell the difference between those that may be bogus? Because people have been selling products like this for thousands of years, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you brought that up. So in cosmetics, I feel like it's kind of undergone this transition, not so different from biology of aging science. So I think cosmetics in the past we think of as stuff that you just put on, cover up. We don't know what it is, how it works, or anything like that. But over the last couple of decades, we've had this transition where really we're thinking about cosmetics as cosmetic science. These companies, industry now is really interested in how it works. How do we make it better? Can we understand the nuance for individuals of what we're actually doing? Obviously, I go back to look at the science papers to see, can I find evidence for this or not? And obviously, some products are going to be better than others. But I think right now we're at this. Maybe what I would consider like second generation cosmetics. First generation is maybe just makeups and hair coloring to kind of cover up the aspects of aging. And now we're at a point where we have some idea of how the biology works. We can affect, let's say, the melanocytes. We can make them work harder or better to reverse, let's say, graying. And then my work, my research focuses on that other population, that stem cell population. I see that as like third generation, and we're not quite there yet to be able to enhance or rejuvenate their function, but I see that is where we're moving in the future. And I think cosmetic industry is really interested in the biology of a lot of how this works.
Let's pursue that, because my question when I was prepping to do this episode was like, if she's saying that it's possible to reverse the color and take my hair back to its natural color, I would imagine that's what's giving gray hair to companies that produce hair dyes and things like that. But it sounds like you're saying that they're working along with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, industry is really interested in the biology of how things are working. Okay. And you know, they're smart. They're going to pivot. They've already started to pivot. You know, they very quickly to identify what are the better products. So I'm not worried about putting them out of business. No, I think it's really a partnership between the aesthetics and the science, you know, because it really does go hand in hand. And they absolutely see that.
And I know Steve's going to be interested in this too, because it's right down your alley, but you're not just studying this because you care about gray hair, right? I mean, as I understand it, there is a much deeper, more important arena that you are studying and your students are studying and with your team about what can happen as we age with these stem cells. Explain a little bit more.
Yeah, so I am really truly what I consider a basic biologist. I like to understand how things work, how we can affect the biology in positive ways. And so when I tell people what I do, I don't say I'm a gray hair scientist. I say I study stem cells and aging and how they're affected with age. And as you mentioned earlier, there are a lot of stem cells within your body. Mm-hmm. And so presumably what we see on the outside is just a portion of reflection or reflecting some of the processes that are very likely happening on the inside. So when people say, oh, it's just cosmetics, it's just vanity, what you're looking at, I think like, these are tissues. They're just like other tissues inside. So there is going to be some connection there. So when I think about our model, we use the stem cells as an easy way to experiment and test things. Gray hair is so easy to see, so that makes it really easy for us to study. But there are other stem cell populations that are kind of similar to the melanocyte stem cells, and the one that I always bring up is muscle stem cells. So in our muscles, we have this sort of dormant muscle stem cell population, and with aging, Steve knows that loss of muscle mass is one aspect of aging that is very debilitating as you get older. And you lose a lot of muscle mass quickly as you get older. And so being able to affect muscle mass would be fantastic. So in my field, when you asked me before, can we reverse graying? There are more than a handful of clinical case studies showing that people with non-pigmented, totally gray hair can have a full gray hair reversal, which to me suggests that we're somehow reactivating maybe the stem cell population. So I imagine if we can do that with gray hair, wouldn't it be so cool that you could do the same thing in a muscle, get those muscle stem cells to wake themselves up or kick them into gear to really enhance your muscle mass in an aged context would be fantastic. And that would solve a lot of, I think, issues for older individuals that are having mobility problems and things like that lead to, reduced quality of life.
So you bring up a really important thing here, which is that similar processes are going on in many kinds of cells throughout your body. It does raise a question. What if you get gray hair early? Does that tell you anything at all about what's going on inside you, or are all of these things operating sort of somewhat independently of one another?
So the answer is yes and no. So you're talking about premature hair graying in a sense. So premature hair graying, let's just define that really quickly, is graying that occurs before natural age-related graying. So this is usually graying that occurs before the age of 30, generally. Okay, so usually before 20, to be honest. And premature hair graying can happen in a handful of different ways. One of the ones that I think of initially is nutritional deficiencies in children. So if you have a vitamin B deficiency or low serum calcium or low ferritin, which is what carries iron within your blood, those have all been associated with premature graying, mostly in children. And actually, if you add back those vitamins or minerals into the diet, that can be reversed. Yeah. I will say, though, the same connection has not been seen with age-related hair graying, that nutrition plays a role in age-related graying. So I would caution people, if you're looking at a over-the-counter solution, which is mostly vitamins and minerals at really high levels, it may not do anything for your graying in that context.
Yes, so this is quite interesting. So in my life as an aging biologist, one of the things we're really interested in is growth hormone. Certainly in mice, if you get rid of growth hormone or its activity, the mice live much longer. So exactly the reverse of what people think about growth. But there are people that are deficient in growth hormone, and some of their small clusters. There's an island off the coast of Croatia called Krk, K-R-K, and there are people there, they're very small, that have a growth hormone mutation. It turns out they don't live exceptionally long, but they don't seem to get gray hair. I've seen photos of them in their 60s and 70s, and their hair is absolutely jet black. So at least that part of their biology seems to be delayed somewhat. It's kind of interesting. You also, it's time to destroy a myth, I think. From the way that you described it, these stories of people's hair turning gray overnight, is that I mean, that's part of the culture, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible?
Not overnight, but over a short period of time, I think the answer is yes, that could potentially occur. And let me explain why. So I told you before that the hair growth in humans is relatively long. So actually, on average, 2 to 7 years, you could have the same hair shaft growing. And that color depends on the melanocytes producing that pigment, right? Those workhorses. Over that 2 to 7 years, your stem cell population could have died. Let's say across your whole scalp, that stem cell population dies, okay? And so when then you turn over those hairs, they go through their next hair cycle, and you have to make the new hair, and you have to activate those melanocyte stem cells. If they're not there, they don't produce melanocytes. And so now all of a sudden you get a lot more gray hair.
How did I get this?
Yeah, and I think you see this a lot in individuals that go through chemotherapy, or maybe pregnant women where there's a delay in hair cycle turnover, and then all of a sudden all of them are turning over kind of more simultaneously. It's not overnight, maybe over the course of a month or a couple of months, and then all the new hairs come out gray.
Well, I think I'm a prime example of that. I underwent chemotherapy, and when all of the hair came off, I still had. They buzzed my head as opposed to shaving it to take care of the follicles, etc. And when it was all first taken off, you could still see a little bit of brown everywhere. And when it came back in like this. So maybe it was there, and I was in that cycle of going 2 to 7 years, and then all of a sudden it came back.
But a really interesting twist on this that I learned from Melissa is there are some kinds of cancer chemotherapy that can actually have the opposite effect, right? The hairs come back in dark when they were gray before.
Right.
Wow.
You want to explain that?
And that's actually why I'm so excited. And when I say, is gray hair reversible, that the answer is yes. So there are, I don't even know how many clinical case studies, but it's not a lot, but it's not rare, where people have been taking a chemotherapy drug, an immunotherapy drug, and the one that is the most fantastic to me is more recently where I think lung cancer patients went in for treatment with an immunotherapy, and the individual has like really white hair, and then took the immunotherapy over several months, comes back out with their complete natural hair color back. So when you look at that, definitively, gray hair reversal is absolutely possible. But how? That's the problem. We don't know. So in these rare instances, we can see that it can happen. Whether we can affect that on like a large global scale, that would be very cool. And if that is the one thing that I can do in my career, that would be amazing, I think.
You will go down in history.
Yeah.
You talked about a myth. I got to touch on this myth. I'm looking at your hair. I really don't see any grays, but you tell me you have a couple. You're not supposed to pluck them, are you? The myth is you pluck one, you'll get 10 in its place, or something like that. But why shouldn't we pluck the gray?
Well, so this is I'm glad that we've had all the conversation leading up to this. So this kind of is a similar idea as the turning gray overnight. So I don't actually know if this is true, and no research has really, I don't think, spent the money to like go around and like plug one and then count and how many, like did 10 more come out. However, there is research in animal models where when you pluck a hair, it's actually kind of traumatic, and in order for the new hair to grow, though the old hair follicle has to like express growth factors and other kinds of signals to make the new hair grow again. And those signals don't just stay with that little space, with that one hair follicle. They kind of just emanate sideways around. And so there is research in mice showing that if you pluck in one area, it actually induces hair cycling in a larger area around that.
Wow.
So my thought for the plucking and then getting 10 more is that similar, if all of those pigmented hairs lost their stem cells, and it's got one gray hair in the middle, you pluck the gray one, and then you induce the rest of those to turn over, now boom, 10 more gray hairs in that place.
Don't pluck the hair.
I'll try. I'll report back.
Sounds like a good plan. You, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but you say that you actually have a child who is prematurely gray. What are you telling your child about the future of gray? Does he or she, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, but does he or she want the gray hair? Have they embraced that, or are they covering it now?
So she doesn't seem to be bothered by it.
Okay.
But it was interesting. I thought, I'm a gray hair researcher. I really should be able to figure this out. So I took her to the doctor to find out. Sure. So she started graying pretty severely around COVID. So she would have been maybe 10 to 12-ish is when we started to see it. Yeah, so immediately when I think about her situation, I started to think children, premature graying, this is a nutritional deficiency. Okay. And so we went and had blood work done, and so she actually has low ferritin levels in her blood. So we started giving her iron supplements, and so far it seems to have slowed or stopped it. Now, this is just a study of one.
Yeah, but an important one.
Yeah, and actually what irritates her more is I go over and I look at her hair all the time. What's going on here?
Mom, stop that.
Anytime one comes out, I'm looking I took some into work. I look at them under the microscope. She's like, Mom, I want to support your work, but find another guinea pig.
This is what living with a scientist is like.
I guess
when my kids were young, and they actually got lice at school.
Oh.
And I thought, cool. And I brought a microscope home, and we scraped their hair, and they got to look at the lice under the microscope.
Dad, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating. Totally fascinating.
I think you both can probably talk about this a little bit, though. Is any of this being impacted by what we have in our society today? Everything from food to the environment around us to, dirt or clean or how we live. Does any of that have an impact on what we're seeing in gray hair?
So, yes. I mean, when we were talking about premature hair graying, there's environmental factors that can cause graying, like smoking leads to a higher risk of earlier graying or premature hair graying. But, the one question that I get all the time is stress. Does stress cause gray hair? And even you and I talked about that briefly at the before we started.
Yes.
So there is actually one really good study, and we aren't able to do a lot of these studies in humans, but in mouse, showing that stress can literally cause gray hair. So in this study, you can take capsaicin, which is the chili pepper or the compound that causes chili peppers to be spicy. And you can inject that just under the skin of a mouse and then pluck those hairs, and all of those hairs grow out gray from that spicy. And so what happens in that context is that spiciness actually induces a stress response around your hair follicle. So around your hair, surrounded by nerves that are important in communicating with the hair, with the rest of your body. And those nerves just essentially blast the hair with neurohormones that affect melanocyte stem cells. Those melanocyte stem cells, they're like, we don't like this. This is not a good environment to be in. And they literally migrate away from the hair and then disappear. They probably die or something like that where they're not supported. And so then that causes stem cell loss, and then the next hair grows in gray. So that's the first scientific evidence showing that literal stress causes gray hair. Now, I don't know, there's a lot of spicy products on the market now that kids like to eat. My kids like to eat this ramen that's really spicy.
Yes.
I don't know in that context whether that would, elicit gray hair, but in general, people think that the hyperactivating the stress response can contribute to some aspect of hair graying.
If we reverse the stress?
Presumably, then we would be slowing it. Yeah.
This brings up an interesting point. In the first book I wrote on aging, I had a picture of Bill Clinton and Theodore Roosevelt at exactly the same age, trying to make the point that even 100 years ago, we aged pretty much the same as we do now. For this kind of thing, there's actually a lot of evidence that we could get, because there's photographs going back to the middle of the 19th century, and we could actually age match people. You hear stress of being a president causes
Barack Obama's the one.
Yeah, that's the example that I always use.
But you never, you need a control. So what's somebody else who's not president, who was the same age, go over that period of time, did that happen? It certainly is dramatic in his case. But it seems to me, I'm thinking now, I put a student on this, unearthing all of these old photographs and trying to see, has there been a change in the age at which, because there's been a change in a lot of things. The age of puberty has decreased by a couple of years in the last century. Anything known about if gray hair is happening earlier or later, or is it only bizarre people like me who ask questions like that?
Probably. No, I mean, in the graying literature, the best epidemiological studies have only occurred recently. So anything prior to that, I mean, I think 2012 is the one that I can think of on the top of my head that it was really done well. And so before that, I don't know that we have enough on record, or nobody's gone back to look in the way that you're suggesting.
It's possible, though.
It's possible.
Anything's possible. When you look at gray hair, I've noticed, just in having to learn to deal with it, that it's coarser, or it sometimes comes in curlier than your normal hair did. Is there anything good about gray hair? I mean, is there anything that we can look at and go, oh, well, I've got this gray hair and I'm going to make the best of it, and here's something good? I
mean, culturally, and this is no surprise, gray hair in men is viewed slightly differently than gray hair in women. So I guess for that could be good if you're a man.
If you're a gorilla, it's also good.
If you're a gorilla, that is true.
Silverback gorillas are the dominant males.
Yeah. I think actually gorillas are maybe the only other animal where gray hair has that distinction. But I would say, though, like you mentioned, gray hairs really are actually different than pigmented hairs. And there's something about the melanocytes there that affect how the hair shaft actually looks. So gray hairs grow faster. That is undeniable. And I think a lot of people notice that, especially people who have pigmented eyebrows, and then you have one long gray hair sticking out of it. Yeah, because they do grow faster. And they also grow thicker. And so I guess if you feel like your hair is thinning, if it starts to go gray, it will actually be, those shafts will be a little bit thicker, so maybe embrace the graying, and then you can dye on top of it, and you will have a thicker amount of hair. Yeah, so one good thing maybe, potentially.
Does gray hair stay in your head longer? Now, I have a reason for asking this. When I was a brunette, it seemed that my hair in certain places was thinning a little bit, because I would have more hair that would fall out in the bathroom or come out in the brush. I find a whole lot less of that now with gray hair.
That's a good question. I do not know the answer to that one. I don't know if anybody's looked at the turnover rate of a gray hair versus a pigmented hair.
There you go. I gave you something.
Yes, I would definitely look to see.
What do we need to take away from this today if a person listening or watching this sees the gray hair coming, what does that person need to think about as we move forward, health-wise, environmentally wise, just embracing what we know is ultimately going to happen?
I mean, graying is a natural aspect of the aging process. And when we think about graying, it really is an aging, what I would consider an aging phenotype. There's only a little bit of evidence to suggest that graying is associated with any aspect of disease. A little bit of that research is a slightly higher risk of heart attack in men if they are have like moderate or high levels of graying. But outside of that, really graying is really an aspect of aging. So I wouldn't necessarily worry terribly. People ask me this all the time. Oh my gosh, I'm gray. Has something happened? Do I need to go and see the doctor or whatever? So I would say it's just that sort of natural process, and that there is a lot of science to suggest that we can rejuvenate or improve or prevent this process or slow this process a little bit. And that actually ties a lot with the same things that we would do to manage our lifespan, our healthy lifespan, those kinds of things. It would be the same thing for our hair.
I mean, another thing that I've learned here today is that there are products that you can buy that actually can affect hair graying. I assumed that all those kinds of advertisements were bogus, because for things that slow aging, they pretty much are all bogus. Yeah. But for things that can actually affect the color of your hair, there are products now that show some promise and some results, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to put a timeline on this. Are you envisioning an answer to, yes, we can reverse gray in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, like I mentioned before, by the end of my career, I hope to be able to affect melanocyte stem cells, so to understand how we can improve that stem cell population. So what is that? You know,
40
how
years.
many more?
40 years. Got a long time to work.
Longer do I have there?
That's wonderful.
And hopefully sooner. I mean, and we are seeing huge gains, and a lot of this comes from biology of aging research. A lot of this comes from dermatology research. So from all these angles, it might be even more rapid than that.
Fascinating study, and I know so many people out there are interested in this for whatever your reason. Embrace the gray, but know that eventually, and probably not that too far in the future, you can make your own choice and have it your way.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Dr. Melissa Harris, been a real pleasure to have you with us today. Steve, I just think that if you keep bringing these colleagues, we're going to learn all we need to know about aging appropriately.
We do such great research at UAB. We have to admit it.
We appreciate it. And for Dr. Stephen Austad, I'm Pam Huff. Here's to living longer.